Picture a feast in ancient Egypt. Gold plates, mountains of honey-glazed meat, tables piled high with exotic fruit. Now picture sitting down at that table yourself. You wouldn't feel like royalty. You'd feel like you'd walked into a trap. Take one bite of their everyday bread, and you could crack a tooth. 3-year-old children drank alcohol every single day, not for fun, but to survive. And if you got sick, a doctor might treat you with crushed mice and crocodile dung. None of this is exaggeration. None of it is Hollywood invention. Scientists have X-rayed Egyptian mummies. They've scraped residue from the bottom of cooking pots that are over 4,000 years old. And what they found tells a brutal story about what really built this empire. The food that fueled the people who raised the pyramids didn't make them strong. It slowly wore them down. To understand how, we need to start with the one thing every single Egyptian ate, every single day: bread. The bread that fought back. Egypt was an agricultural giant. The Nile made sure of that. Wheat grew in abundance, year after year. But if you picked up a loaf of Egyptian bread from 4,000 years ago, it wouldn't feel like bread at all. It would feel like biting into sandpaper. Why would something so basic turn into a weapon against the people eating it? It comes down to how it was made. Egyptians didn't have steel mills. They ground their grain between rough stones, by hand. And as that grinding happened, tiny bits of stone chipped off and mixed straight into the flour. Then there was the desert. Egypt sits on the edge of the Sahara, and the wind never really stopped. Fine sand coated the grain, the dough, even the ovens. There was no keeping it out. So meal after meal, year after year, people were quietly eating ground-up rock. The results show up clearly in the archaeological record. When researchers examine ancient Egyptian skulls, they find the same thing again and again: severe, extreme tooth wear. It didn't matter if you were a slave or a priest. Teeth were worn down to stubs by adulthood. Many people in their 20s had already lost the hard enamel that protects a tooth completely. Run your tongue over your front teeth right now. Feel that smooth, hard surface. Now imagine it sanded away, exposing raw nerve underneath. Cold air would send pain shooting through your skull. A sip of water at room temperature could feel like a shock. And the pain wasn't even the worst part. Once enamel was gone, bacteria had a direct path into the bloodstream. Jaw abscesses and bone infections were common, almost expected. In a world without antibiotics, a bad toothache could turn into a death sentence. Some of history's greatest monuments were raised by people living with constant grinding dental pain. Beer for babies. If eating hurt that much, at least they could drink water, right? Here's where it gets stranger. In ancient Egypt, the safest thing you could hand a toddler wasn't milk or water. It was beer. This wasn't about throwing parties for children. It was about keeping them alive. The Nile gave Egypt life, but drinking straight from it was dangerous. The water carried animal waste and parasites, including schistosoma, a worm that burrows into the body and slowly destroys organs from the inside. Drinking raw Nile water was a gamble every time. So people turned to brewing. But forget any image of a crisp, clear lager. Egyptian beer looked nothing like that. It was thick, chunky, sour, closer to a fermented porridge than a drink. To make it, bakers took half-baked bread, broke it into chunks, dropped it into a vat of water, and let it ferment in the heat. The result was so full of grain husks that people drank it through a filtering straw just to avoid choking on solid pieces. It sounds unappetizing, but it worked. Fermentation lowered the pH of the liquid and produced alcohol, both of which killed off the bacteria and parasites that made raw water so dangerous. On top of that, this beer was loaded with calories, carbohydrates, and B vitamins. It functioned as liquid bread. Put the pieces together and the picture becomes clear. The laborers who dragged stone blocks for the pyramids were paid in beer. Toddlers who had just stopped nursing were given beer as their daily drink. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Drink the water and risk parasites, or drink fermented mush and stay mildly buzzed all day. They chose the buzz. Sweetness as a curse. You might assume things were different for the elite. Pharaohs had gold, power, servants. Surely their diets were better. In some ways, being wealthy made things worse. Ordinary Egyptians ate coarse bread, onions, garlic, and beer. The elite had something extra: sweetness. Their tables carried raw honey, fresh figs, and sweet dates, luxuries that came at a steep cost. Remember those teeth, already worn down and exposed by grit in the bread. Now pack that damage with sticky honey and sugar day after day. That combination created ideal conditions for bacteria to thrive. Wealth didn't buy better health in ancient Egypt. It often bought a faster, more painful decline. Consider Hatshepsut, one of the most powerful female pharaohs in history. She led armies. She commissioned massive temples. She had access to more wealth than almost anyone alive at the time. When researchers examined her mummy, the reality of her final years came into focus. She wasn't the flawless figure often shown in film. She was significantly overweight and likely suffered from diabetes. Her teeth showed serious decay and infection. Many researchers believe that this powerful ruler who governed millions may have ultimately been killed by a bacterial infection that started with a single rotting tooth. Human beings are wired to crave sugar because for most of our evolutionary history, sugar meant a rare and valuable source of energy. That instinct kept our ancestors alive during scarcity. But the moment Egyptian royalty gained near unlimited access to sugar, that same instinct turned against them. No amount of gold could buy her a course of antibiotics or a simple root canal. When medicine turned strange. So what happened when someone in ancient Egypt actually got sick? When a tooth throbbed, or the stomach turned? This is where the story takes a sharp turn. We have access to an ancient medical text called the Ebers Papyrus, essentially a medical reference from around 1500 BC. It records hundreds of remedies, and some of them show real insight. Take infected wounds. An Egyptian healer might apply a piece of moldy bread directly to the skin. It sounds bizarre, but certain molds naturally produce compounds similar to penicillin. Long before modern science understood antibiotics, Egyptian healers were stumbling onto something close to it. That's where the brilliance ends, though, because much of the rest of their medicine reads like a nightmare. To the ancient Egyptian mind, illness wasn't only physical. It was spiritual. Sickness often meant a demon or evil spirit had taken hold of the body, and the goal of treatment was to make the body so unpleasant that the demon would want to leave. A stomach ache might be treated with a mixture involving fly droppings, crushed mice, or bird waste. An infected wound might be packed with animal fat mixed with donkey or crocodile dung. Crocodile waste pressed directly into an open wound. Rather than healing the infection, treatments like these often introduced new, dangerous bacteria. Instead of curing the original illness, they sometimes caused tetanus and killed the patient faster than the sickness ever would have. A trip through time. Let's put the full picture together. Bread gritty enough to grind teeth to stubs. Beer thick and sour, brewed out of necessity rather than pleasure. Honey that turned wealth into a health hazard. A medical system that mixed genuine insight with crocodile dung. Now look around your own kitchen. What did you eat today? Maybe a slice of soft white bread without a single grain of sand baked in. Maybe a glass of clear water straight from the tap without a second thought about parasites. You probably didn't think twice about any of it. That's exactly the point. Your body still runs on ancient instincts. You crave sugar, fat, and salt because deep down, your biology still expects scarcity. But you live in a world your ancestors could never have imagined. Imagine building a time machine and pulling Ramesses the Great, arguably the most powerful pharaoh in Egyptian history, straight into your kitchen. He wouldn't understand your phone or your television. But open your refrigerator, and he might think he was standing in front of a god's power. He'd see meat that stays fresh and cold for a week without spoiling, fruit shipped in from places he never knew existed, milk sealed safely in a carton, with none of the risk that came with Nile water. Then you'd turn on the tap, and clean water would flow instantly, with no one carrying it, no disease waiting inside it. And if you told him that a toothache no longer meant a slow, painful death, that somewhere nearby a person could numb the pain completely, fix the problem in half an hour, and hand him a pill to prevent infection, he might not believe you. Rameses the Great would likely trade his entire empire, every ounce of gold, every chariot, every monument, for the food safety and medical care you take for granted every single day. The leftovers sitting forgotten in the back of your fridge, the ones you'll probably throw out tomorrow, would have looked like an impossible luxury to the people who once ruled the ancient world. It took humanity thousands of years of ground-down teeth, sour beer, and painful trial and error just to make dinner safe, predictable, and, frankly, a little boring. So tonight, when you open the fridge and complain there's nothing to eat, run your tongue across your teeth one more time. And be glad you're living now, not then.